Live Boxing.
We have a fight. It is official. Anthony Joshua will meet Robert Helenius at the O2 on Saturday night. At the weigh-in, they had words, and suddenly, all of the good-natured friendliness of 1 week vanished. It turned personal. AJ v Helenius. This is 5 Live Boxing with me, Steve Bunce. It's AJ week. So the only place to start, I guess, on the day before the fight is at the weigh-in. And we're inside Westfield, in West London. That Westfield, not the Westfield in Stratford. That's enough promotion for a shopping venue. And I'm joined here by the same man that joined me before AJ's last fight. Local boy, if I'm allowed to say that, but that's the end of the geography lesson. George Groves, former world champion, is with me. George, before we talk about the crowd, and there's a big crowd building here, I love the layout they got here at Westfield. I've got to ask you what your reaction was last Saturday when you heard that Dillian Whyte had fouled another test and that he was not going to be fighting AJ, and in fact the entire show was in jeopardy. What was your first reaction, George?
Well, it was a bit of disappointment, to be honest, Steve, because every now and again I do sort of dip into protecting the sport of boxing, and at that point I'm thinking...
We all have to.
Well, you know, sometimes I hate it, sometimes I love it, but I'm like, this is just no good. And you're thinking, why? You know, surely Dillian Whyte doesn't need to be cheating at this point. So
for this much money?
Has he made a mistake? Does he think that he can beat the system? And now we just know that we're going to get no answers. There's going to be loads of questions with no answers.
Dillian has said that he will clear his name like he did back in 2019. But hey-ho, the bottom line is Dillian Whyte is out and talking to everybody involved in the AJ business. It looks very unlikely that we're ever going to see a third fight, a second as a professional, between Dillian Whyte and AJ. But we've got Robert Helenius, who, at the same time, bizarrely, as we were finding out about Dillian Whyte, he was stepping in the ring for his first fight for 8 months in, I think, an 8-rounder against a guy in an ancient castle in Finland. And I don't know if you know this, Jules, but his promotional team knew they had the AJ fight, but they didn't tell him. And he said, I could sense there was something wrong. So he had to win that fight before they told him. Then they gave him the news.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you are the Helenius team at that point, you're thinking, do I tell him, do I not? Do I
let him fight or do I not? What if he gets cut?
Yes, exactly. I'd imagine he had a run out last, as you say, in a castle up in Finland, which makes great for the pictures on the Instagram. But this is the fight that he would always pick, and fortunately for him, he came through it. And I think it's good. He had to have that fight for this fight to even be made. And
if you're Helenius, you're taking this at the top of a hat, aren't you?
I think so.
Providing the money's somewhere near where you think you get.
Well, you imagine let's get it straight, Steve, slightly cheaper than the crowd who are also in the frame for it. But I think it's a fight that needs to be. The show needed to be saved. Someone needs to step in. You know, it's a good fight. And
he did. Now, on the subject of the show needs to be saved and someone needs to step in, as you know, I spare every single expense when I put together a show. Paddy, the producer, Manny's wandering around with his microphone. They're all on skeleton wages. They're lucky if they get an Oyster card out of me. But now we're joined by a man who saved the show last time. No disrespect to you, George. He was brilliant. It's Andy Bell, AJ's publicist. Andy, I'm just asking George there what his initial reaction was when he found out that Dillian Whyte, the big grudge fight, was off. He's George. I've asked other people, David Hay and co. I'm going to ask you, where were you? What was your reaction? And did you drop your head into your hands, Andy?
Well, listen, first of all, it's nice to see you boys again. Feels like
sorry,
deja vu all over again. Little bone to pick. The last time I was on, I made a really funny joke about Fletcher's shoes,
and no one laughed.
Which got cut.
Yeah, it got cut.
So that's words with producer.
That's the power Fletcher's got.
Producer Patrick with his words about that.
That's outrageous.
He's not here today. You must have really upset him.
That's bad, man.
It was hilarious as well, so I'm quite disappointed about this. Anyway, finding out. Yeah, actually, it was a bit of a weird one because there were people dotted all over the world who were involved in this
like waking
process.
up at 2 in the morning and stuff like that.
So Eddie was away, Frank was away, I was away, I was in America. Obviously, AJ was back from America. He was in southwest London where he's staying and training at the moment. So I actually woke up to it on Saturday morning. I thought it was a joke. I thought Frank was like having a
bad
funny joke with us. And from that moment on, it all just spiraled, you know.
Now, what's interesting, Andy, I mean, I know that, you know, that everybody in the AJ team is involved, semi-involved with selecting opponents and okaying opponents and agreeing opponents. But let me ask you, as his publicist and a man that's worked in this business and worked in this world with a foot in all sorts of camps. I mean, you're like, generally like an octopus wearing different boots.
Frank calls me the most conflicted man in boxing.
Yeah, you might very well be the most conflicted man in boxing. So. What, did you come up with ideas and strategies, especially once we knew it was going to be the giant Viking? Anyway, I'm helping you out. The Nordic Nightmare. I'm helping you out, son. Helenius.
No, to be fair, I can't take any credit for this. I mean, the way this rolls
set
out.
You up for it nicely,
I appreciate that, Bunsey. I think the way that this really rolled out was everyone found out the news. I think AJ at first was disappointed because he's been getting ready for this. He's been building up to Dylan. He wanted to smash Dylan. Like, you know, obviously there's bad blood there. He wanted to finish the job. So he was disappointed, maybe a little bit angry about the whole situation. I think then you've got to hand it to Eddie, Frank, Matcham and Freddie and the guys at 258 who then get straight on it. Here's the list. What are we saying? And then it boils down to Derek and the training team and Anthony. Let's go through it. Let's have a look at this. But at the end of the day, he was adamant the show will go on.
And what's interesting, George, this is your first appearance this week. I've been around a couple of days, different events and whatnot. And I'm not just saying this. It still feels like a big fight. It still feels like an important fight. Sure, people have dismissed it and they said Helenius has got no chance. Hey, he probably doesn't have a chance. But then most fighters in most fights don't have a chance, especially at a heavyweight level. But it's still got that feel. And are you surprised? I'll ask you second, Andy. Are you surprised by that? Because it doesn't feel like a walkover. It still feels like an event.
Yeah, I sympathise with Joshua at this point. I'm thinking everyone else has, and the way it's all been handled publicly feels like just and fair in that regard. Where,
but that's the let's kick Joshua in the privates gang, isn't it? Well, and that's a big old gang to be in. By the way.
You know, it's a Joshua fight, Joshua week. It's Joshua. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
How do we still get Joshua fighting at the weekend? How do we save the show?
Yeah.
How do you keep the broadcasters happy? How do you keep the fans happy?
Keep everybody
how do you
happy.
keep Andy Joshua happy? And I suppose the question is, how do we arrive at Helenius? Is he the one who's most affordable? It's obviously been dropped from a pay-per-view event. Is that the first decision that has to be made?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to it. I think at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of people that have to be kept happy in this situation. I think DAZN, obviously, you know, they are partners of Anthony, but they need a proper fight. Yeah. You know, they weren't prepared to just put on any fight. So I think when it came down to it, there was probably a really short list of names of fighters who were actually available, wanted to take the fight, but were also of a pedigree that was good enough to keep this event on. I think it's worth saying as well, one thing AJ has talked a lot about this week and from when he found out was the rest of the card. You know, obviously, as you know,
keeping them all on,
these guys don't get paid. Yeah. You know, and a lot of these people have paid a lot of money for their camps. They've got themselves to a week before the event, and then the event's gone. They've still got those overheads. So he was really laser focused on this. Isn't just about me. We've got to keep the show on the road. These guys don't get paid.
And I think that's really important, that, because it's not just the big guys like Philip Hergovich, you know, he's part of a big organisation, Wasserman and co. So, you know, no disrespect, Philip's probably got good accountants, he can probably take care of that. It's some of the other guys, the guys on the way up, guys like Johnny Fisher who are not making fortunes.
Campbell Hatton.
Yeah, Campbell Hattons. You know, those guys have had big camps. People have got to, and they've still got to pay people, remember? You know, so it's, you know, Johnny Fisher can't say, no, I'm not paying subs, I'm not doing this, I'm not paying for that. He's probably forked out stuff. So, you know, full credit to everybody, starting with AJ at the top of the pyramid, for keeping the fight on track. And I completely agree with you there. I completely agree with you there, Andy. Andy, I've got to ask you this. I've got to throw it forward, because I've got to do this, George. I've got to do my job sometimes. You know, most of the time I keep it lightweight, but every now and again I've got to put him in some sort of neck hold, choke hold.
It's worrying.
We're going to Saudi in early next year for Deontay Wilder if a couple of things happen. AJ's got to win and the deal's got to be finalised. That is going to happen, isn't it? I mean, assuming he wins.
Yeah, as far as we're concerned, that will be next. That will be next. He's not overlooking Helenius, and I know it's the done thing, isn't it, in boxing? So we're not overlooking the next fight. That's not what we're doing. But I know, you know, in the background, the rest of the team, Eddie, Freddie, 258, these conversations are ongoing. that is the path, that is the trajectory, that's where he wants to get to. I think it's fair to say that we're in, the career is now starting to get to the twilight bit, and there are certain guys out there that he wants to fight, and he's been really, really open about who those people are. So yeah, that's got to be the next focus. We get through Saturday, and then we're going to head out there and see what we can do next.
After his win at the weekend, Helenius, the fight before then, he gets blown away in a round, less than a round, against Deontay Wilder, and that was Deontay Wilder announced to the world, "I'm back." Does that add pressure now for Anthony Joshua to do the same?
I think it probably does.
And if he doesn't, obviously the heavyweights we know live forever. The fight still gets made. Him and Wilder. Yeah. But does he need to go out and put on a show?
Yes, in short. But I'd almost like to throw that back to you a little bit, because AJ's spoken this week a little bit about other performances that he's had. Other guys like Eric Molina that he fought and got out early, and Wilder went a little bit longer with him. So it's not as clear cut.
It's two-sided.
It's not as clear cut. But from your point of view, if you were Anthony going into this fight now, are you under pressure to get the job done within the first 3 rounds? Or as a fighter, do you just think, nah, I stick to the game plan, this is where I'm going with it, I'm going to do what is good for me? Or do you feel that pressure?
I get what you're saying, and you're not competing with Wilder to get rid of him quicker.
Because he's done
he
21 men in the first round as well, Wilder.
Yeah.
George,
but,
good stat.
But if the fight isn't over by 6 rounds, I think there's going to be question marks over Joshua's head. And I don't think he's going to be able to say, I was working on stuff that I've been working on in the gym. They want to see a knockout, and it doesn't matter how it comes.
And I think he's going to be okay on that, simply because, George, he's admitted, he said, listen, the fight against Jermaine Franklin, I didn't like what I did. I still had too many issues. I wasn't right, but I got the win. And he's actually said, close that book. This is a different situation. AJ has done something which I haven't heard him do for a long time. He's put himself under a bit of pressure here to be aggressive and to get Helenius out of there. Now, some might say, well, of course he's going to do that anyway, but he's put himself under pressure. And I'm not sure the last time I remember him saying, don't worry, Bunsey, I'll get Ruiz out of there in 3 rounds. Don't worry, I'll knock Usyk out. In fact, I can't remember, George, a long time ago. So I think we will see a different AJ, but you're right, George. We have to see a different AJ.
I think that is the game plan. Game plan is to blast this guy out 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds max.
I agree. The disappointment in all of this is that it's not Dylan White that he's doing that to. Because I think if he had gone in there, blasted Dylan out within the first 6 rounds, I think a lot of the naysayers would have said, right, okay, we're back. The killer instinct's there. Let's move on to a much bigger fight and see where we go with it. So there is a slight tinge of disappointment that if he gets the job done, he gets it done well against Helenius. Early doors, there will still be a few question marks, but it was Helenius. So it's a little shame that we don't see him do that against White. But agree, he's got to go in there and put on a performance on Saturday night.
Andy, I've got to let you go, mate, because there's representatives from Italian clothing companies and international exotic
and that's
airlines.
Just for you, Bunsey.
Yeah, and that's just, that was going to be, don't nick my payoff line. And I was going to ask you to go over and see if you can do a bit of work for me. Andy, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, chaps. Always a pleasure.
I know, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you. Although,
by the way, that goes into the group WhatsApp, the AJ group WhatsApp. Yeah. Whenever Andy Bell does an interview, the photos go in. I know.
Hey, the mad thing is, I'll tell you, Eddie Hearn's joined me now, sorry. Andy Bell said, point of order before we start, the last time I was on, I made a good joke about Darren Fletcher, the commentator's shoes. That got taken out. Point of order also, another one of something else I said, got shortened. He remembers it. He knows his interviews off by heart. You don't even know what you were doing half an hour ago.
Unbelievable.
You don't even know what you were doing half an hour ago, do you? I mean, like, you know you had a microphone in your face.
I don't know what I just said in my last interview, but I don't know what I'm going to say in this interview, to be honest with you. But that's what we want, isn't it? I mean, raw. It's raw.
Listen, Ed, it's the AJ business, and we started on Saturday with no fight. Sunday we started to get a fight. Monday we officially had a fight. Tuesday you announced it. It feels this week like we've got a fight that we've been planning for 12 weeks. I'm amazed by that transition from to... Yeah. Well, it just feels like a normal fight. It just feels like a normal AJ event.
It's a great night from top to bottom. And when you look around here at Westfield, I mean, what we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 tiers, all packed. It's an Anthony Joshua fight week. Yeah. So no one else. Don't forget, we do a weigh-in every week. Right, we know what works and what doesn't work, and we never see anything like this outside of a Canelo Alvarez weigh-in.
But the last Canelo fight, they undersold it. Yeah. They stuck it in a tiny little hall with about 17 school kids and a couple of members of his family. They should have done. I mean, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. What a mistake that was. That could have been outside in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah, you can tell him that, but
I'm not going to tell him. I mean,
we weren't too involved in the Mexican production of that one. But
I appreciate that, son.
We'll take the credit for the ring walk.
Thank you.
And John Ryder's performance in the last 6 rounds. But, you know, this Saturday's all about executing the game plan with Derek James and showcasing the improvements.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everything I'm hearing is fantastically positive. And when we was in the Franklin camp, it was okay. We weren't over the moon with everything in camp in terms of AJ's preparation. This camp, and this is really down to the decision of him wanting to fight on Saturday and Sunday. He feels great. Yeah. And I think he's gelling well with Derek. I think the one thing with AJ is he's brilliant at executing a game plan. If he doesn't believe in the game plan, truly, he's
When's
not...
that happened, Eddie?
What, not believing in the game plan?
Yeah.
Alexander Usyk won.
Yeah.
Andy Ruiz probably.
won.
I think he was just sort of mixed between styles and instructions with trainers and stuff like that. And he needs to 100% believe in what he's being told. And when he does, he's brilliant at executing it. You go back to Ruiz too, like, although, you know, it was a different AJ in that fight, that was exactly what he was told to do. Yeah. In the Usyk 2 fight under Robert Garcia, he was close, but Usyk was just brilliant as well. So who knows if that would have made a difference. But when he knows and believes what he's doing, he's really good at putting it together. Yeah. If he's mixed between styles and he's watching this and he's having pads with this guy, and
all over the place.
This time it feels like, you know, we a lot's been said about that relationship with Rob McCracken. Ultimately, Rob McCracken got him through fights like Vladimir Klitschko when he come back after the 6th round and he said, "Listen to me," and AJ just listened, trusted, believed in him, and I think we're returning to that with Derek James.
Yeah, and also with Derek, the big thing with Derek, George, is it's back to one voice, because we started to, too many voices started to creep in post-Vladimir, too many other people getting in the corner, too many people getting in AJ's ear, and Derek runs a strict old shop. It's Derek or it's nobody. It's, you know, Derek's the voice. Let's put it, no one's wandering into Derek's gym, standing in front of AJ and trying to tell him to throw something. No one's doing that. Derek runs an iron gym, and they are still a work in progress. And we knew going into the Franklin fight that AJ wasn't absolutely firing, and it's a totally different. I spent some time with him the other day, 20 minutes. He seems totally, absolutely different. And I want to ask you something. I hate to do this. I don't like looking beyond the fight that we've got coming up, okay? But I'm trying to think of a time when the fight coming up is so amazingly different and bigger than the one we're in. I know they happen. You know, I know it has happened, but in history, this is not a bad jump from Helenius to potentially Deontay Wilder, Fortunes next year in Saudi. I know it's not something that we should talk about, but we can't but talk about it because it's there, it's hanging.
But also the problem is last time we had a late replacement through a failed drug test was Jarrell Miller with Andy Ruiz. And at that moment, we were in negotiations with Deontay Wilder to fight him after. In fact, on the whole of that fight week, everybody was talking about Wilder fight rather than Ruiz fight. And we're kind of, it's 100% deja vu.
So it's not dissimilar.
So, but, you know, we all know, win this fight, we're going to make the Deontay Wilder fight. That's what we want to do. So we're kind of back where we started in that respect, but we can't afford any weaknesses this time. The one thing I'll say about Derek James as well, about particularly the belief in him. They've worked for 6 weeks on a game plan for Dillian Whyte.
Yeah.
That AJ was 1,000,000% comfortable with. He knew Dillian, he'd boxed him before. Now all of a sudden you've got 5 days to work on a new game plan with Robert Helenius. Derek says it hasn't changed much other than the trajectory of the punches is different.
Yeah.
But you are reshuffling the game plan over a 5-day period. And, you know, I think it will be a tentative start in this fight because both guys are very tall. But I think once AJ finds his range and lands, I want to be able to do an interview on Saturday night with you guys in the ring and say, you know, he's just coming off a great performance against Helenius. Wilder's next, we're going to beat him, and then we're going to fight Fury.
Absolutely.
You know, but we need to see it in this fight. We need to see something that convinces you and everybody watching that he can beat Deontay Wilder and he can compete with Tyson Fury.
So you can hear the MC, ring announcer, David Diamante in the background, calling Eddie to the stage. Eddie's had to go. Perfect time to take a break.
Hear them do their thing in the Premier League. Then hear what they have to say on BBC Sounds.
Maybe next week.
Better than last time and about where he's been for most of his successful career. And Helenius was just a couple of pounds different than he was for the fight of his life last year against Deontay Wilder. But that wasn't the story of the weigh-in, George. The story of the weigh-in was the end, the face-to-face, when they came face-to-face. Now, we've seen it 1,000 times. You've been in 30 odd of them. Some people say, oh, Bunsey, there's nothing in them, but there was something in that you could sense it. And I'll tell you what AJ said when I just grabbed him by the stage there. What did you think when you saw the two of them eye to eye?
Yeah, he seemed genuine, whatever it was, Stephen. We do see it sometimes. People are, either the occasion's got someone they're trying to ham up, try a bit of excitement. I'm not sure what it was. I'm fascinated. Please enlighten me.
Well, I went straight backstage to grab hold of him because I just needed to find out, get a clue. And so what he said to me was, AJ said, and I won't swear, obviously, he said, I looked at him and I went, you got a problem with me? And he didn't reply. This is AJ talking. So AJ said, you got a problem with me? I can fight you. I'm fighting you tomorrow, but I can fight you now if you want. And he didn't reply. And he said, you want to fight me now? And George, I'm telling you, AJ, you could sense it. There was emotion in his voice. I mean, there was adrenaline and emotion in his voice. AJ, just to let people know, AJ's walked out into the crowd now, and he's standing with Johnny Oliver, his first coach at Finchley when he walked through the door, and also Derek Del Boy Chisora, who was also trained by Johnny Oliver. So Johnny Oliver's there, AJ's on one side, Derek's on the other side, and they're doing pictures. That's a nice scene. So, getting back to that, George, have you ever had that, even in your two Carl Froch weigh-ins and face-offs, did you ever leave there just a little bit hyped, or did you try and control your emotions, or was it impossible to control your emotions?
Yeah, no, you are trying to control your emotions, and when there's no previous needle, the fight was made a couple of days ago.
Yeah, there's no needle here. There was a loving 2 days ago, George.
Yeah, it's like, I think Joshua's now, he's just, probably that was him working really hard to control his emotions. So he's a lot of, always come with pressure. We've heard Eddie Hearn talk about being in the twilight of his career now. He needs to make every moment count. He's probably nervous about missing it. He wants to be present in the moment and enjoy it and love it. But yeah, I think not too much to read into it, but
he put him out a little bit.
Yeah,
because Helenius was so nice the other day. They talked about their day sparring up at the GB squad. The fact that Helenius had given up on a family holiday to accept the fight, and it was genuinely cordial. I was as far away from them as I am from you now, but that there has drastically shifted and changed things.
Yeah, well, you'd imagine expecting to fight Dillian Whyte, there will be spite in the build-up, spite certainly at the final presser and the final weigh-in before they meet in the ring, and maybe that spilled over and Helenius is getting the treatment that was sort of reserved for Dillian Whyte.
Yeah.
I just feel that he's super hyped. He's been away from home, concentrating solely on the fight, like good fighters should do. But you really are just zoned in, when you're away from home in another country. Even this fight night now, and he knows he's got the pressure of the talk of Deontay Wilder next.
Yeah, and that Deontay Wilder thing, just briefly, George, because we've wrapped up here, we've mocked up, and I've still got to speak to Joe Markowski from DAZN in a second. That Wilder fight, and I don't really like to talk about fights. I know I keep saying that, but that's a massive golden carrot. Imagine if it's only 30 million, which it's not. 40, 50 million, that puts extra pressure on a night. Any fight, doesn't it, George? Puts pressure on any sparring session.
Yeah. Whenever there's a fight in hand, and it's a big fight, it puts an awful lot of pressure. It happens for a lot of fighters, and it's happening this time round for Anthony Joshua. I think, bizarrely, it's just the fight. It's because it's such an exciting fight. It's not for belts. It's not for anything else. It's not for hometown glory. It's likely going to be in Saudi Arabia for no belts, but it's such an exciting fight. Heavyweights. One of them's going to get blasted away. Pressure's on. It ramps up really nicely for fight week, and now the pressure's on Joshua because he's the one who's got to go and win tomorrow night.
So as we come to the end of the show here, it wouldn't be a big show if we didn't get somebody on from DAZN. Well, we've sacked off Alfie. Alfie's gone. Alfie's history.
Alfie's gone to Ibiza.
Alfie's gone to Ibiza. Okay, so I've got Joe Markowski.
You get the B team back on.
we get the A team. I've got to ask you first of all, Joe. You were, I'm assuming, close to Nate Diaz and Jake Paul last week when you got the news that Dillian Whyte had failed the test, and that fight was off, and that the show itself was in jeopardy. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, listen, before we get into all of that, I think it's very good of you to come back from your summer safari holiday and grace us with your presence. But yeah, serious
things now. The man from Del Monte looks
like. The man from Del Monte, yeah. It's like some sort of game lodge, sort of anti-poaching staff or something.
Joe, I'm certainly game, son, that's for sure.
No, but all jokes aside, I was in Dallas. It was the early hours of Alice debate with your colleague Simon Jordan this morning. For me, it was technically Friday night, very late Friday night, sort of approaching midnight. Got a call from Eddie. First decision, very, very simple.
Yeah.
Why AJ off? Very disappointed. Look, doping in sport is a big problem. It's particularly a problem in fight sports where there is a more direct consequence of any doping. Clearly, that was the first decision done. Immediately, the conversation flips into, right, who's an alternative opponent? Does AJ want to fight? Do we want to continue with the show? First question, does AJ want to do it? Immediately, yes. So credit to him for the undercard in particular, for the fans. It continues the show going ahead. Then it becomes the slightly harder discussion of, okay, what are the options? And for us, candidly, what are the economics of that? What's the deal structure? Because we can't, as great as it would be to put on any show, we can't do that unless it makes sense for us business-wise. So that was a discussion over sort of 36 hours over the weekend. There was obviously the distraction of Jake Paul, Nate Diaz. Huge show for us, very successful show.
Good fight as well. I mean, it was a great fight. It was a great 8-rounder.
And I know you love that stuff. And I think in terms of crossover boxing, the best show we've done so far, quality-wise, in terms of the actual sport.
Absolutely.
But by sort of Sunday night, Monday morning UK time, we were circling around Helenius. We approved the deal, and then Tuesday morning we announced it.
And Joe, I'll never ask you to divulge monies and fees, obviously, but my understanding is that it's AJ who's taking a decent to big hit on this fight, and that most of the people underneath him are not suffering at all, if they're suffering, if they're even suffering.
Well, I think, look,
is that your understanding too?
There's clearly an economic delta between a top-tier AJ fight, which AJ White was, and with all due respect to Robert Helenius,
yes, of course,
and this fight, there's a delta in the numbers. AJ bears the brunt of that. I think, look, he's been in a 12-week training camp. He's in tremendous shape. He wants to stretch his legs. He wants to fight. And I think all credit to him. He gives Helenius a great opportunity. There's no pushover. And it gives the undercard, the guys, an opportunity to continue with their craft to make some money. So I think it's great for everyone, and I think the public appreciate how quickly we reacted to it.
And I think you reacted correctly. Forget anything that's happened in the past. And the public, they have reacted. I mean, the stuff that we've been doing on 5 Live suggests that there's almost no dip at all. People still fancy it.
I think there's hardly any.
And that's the AJ factor, Joe.
Oh, we refunded the pay-per-view purchases that we'd had straight away. This is now a subscription fight on DAZN, which is appropriate. Value for money for fans. We want to continue doing that. Speak to Frank and Eddie. I don't think there's any real request for refunds. There's no massive drop.
It's not an exodus, let's put it that way.
It will be a very, very packed O2 Arena on Saturday night. And that, I think, reflects the fact that AJ brings out the fans. AJ's the biggest name in British boxing commercially. He always has been since his rise. And I think, look, the public want to see an AJ fight. It's a great card. Big heavyweight fights on the card as well. Obviously topped by AJ Helenius.
Joe, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I was only joking. You're always number one. And Alfie going to Ibiza. He told me he'd be here today. I'm very upset with him.
He's told me he's taking his kids, which I think is probably the wrong decision in Ibiza. But let's find out when he gets back. Thanks very much.
So, sorry about that, George. I left you there to go and talk to Joe Markowski, who's the absolute boss of the zone. I think everyone imagines AJ will win, and from hearing you talking to Andy Bell, 20 or so minutes ago, you want to see. I'm not putting words in his mouth. You want to see something like an old AJ stepping out, getting the job done, and just getting rid of him.
Well, yeah, I want to see a better AJ, Steve. That's the thing.
That's a nice line, yeah.
He's with new trainer out in the States, Derek James, training alongside Errol Spence and all these other superstars. I want to see a better Joshua. It doesn't necessarily mean he's got to be reckless and dangerous and caution to the wind to knock guys out. He can still be super smart, don't need to take any shots, but have that spite and venom to get rid of the guys. Don't mean you've got to be safety first. Obviously he's a big guy. It doesn't mean I've heard him talk. He's 6'6". He wants to get behind the straight shots, sure, but you can do it with the intent of getting rid of the guy in front of you. And I think we will see that. I can't see him being allowed out in the States in these pro gyms in America without having that spite. You don't survive. You don't live. Of course, Anthony Joshua over here is a mega name, and he is a mega name all over the world. But you step into them gyms in the States, it is slightly humbling. You're in there with pound for pound.
And also Derek James, who he trains with in Dallas, because Derek's got all those great fighters around him. there's no special treatment there under any circumstances, George. You know, AJ just happens to be one of the fighters in the gym, the biggest and the heaviest. That's it. He's just AJ. Errol Spence is just Errol Spence. The Charlos are just Charlo. Frank Martin's just Frank Martin. And even Ryan Garcia is just Ryan Garcia. I mean, that's Derek's way. He tries to run it bizarrely like a gym. Plus, he told me something interesting, Derek. He said they never train together. They all come at different times.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. That happens. You know, I've got David Hay standing behind me when I first turned pro. I'll be in the gym, and as I was finishing, David Hay was in. He did take an hour and a half to do his stretches and his warming up and his rapping and do his hair. So, you know, it was a long day otherwise. But that's how it goes in a pro gym, you know. And if you want, you can sit and linger and watch the other guys do some stuff. If they're sparring on, I guarantee you the other fighters in Derek James' gym are lingering around and watching the sparring.
Well, I know AJ, because AJ's always been a sponge. No matter what he's got in the bank, no matter what he's achieved, he is a sponge, and he would have hanged around. George Groves, thank you very much. Jules is going to wander off like everybody else wanders off. So we heard from Joe Makovsky, the boss at DAZN. We had Andy Bellon, who's been next to AJ since the Olympic final all those years ago. And, of course, Eddie Hearn was on. It's been a week of 5 Live boxing pods in the build-up to the AJ Robert Helenius fight, live on 5 Live at 10 p.m. Saturday night. AJ weeks are special. There's a couple of thousand people here at Westfield. They are special. He's in the business. Let's get through Helenius and let's move on, because next it could be Wilder. That is some fight to contemplate, and that is some carrot to dangle in front of any fighter. I'm Steve Bunce, and this is 5 Live Boxing.